Hi guys, welcome back to Sabia and Loren. We got a new video for you guys today.
Yep, so since it's actually going to be the 6-year anniversary of Lauren's accident, we, for the first time ever, we actually decided to script our intro, so you're gonna see us reading from it because we didn't want to mess up or take away from what it's about. But today is the 6-year anniversary, the day the video this is coming out. Technically that's tomorrow for us, but the 27th of September is in fact when everything changed for us and this accident happened for Lauren.
And 6 years ago, Sabia unconditionally chose to take on that role as my caregiver, not knowing what she got herself into, but knowing that her love for me would be strong enough to face any hurdle that life would throw our way.
But yeah, so here we are, 6 years later, still together, still just as in love as we were in the beginning, if not more so, and yeah,
And that choice to be a caregiver and to willingly let go of many dreams and life expectations is an extreme sacrifice, and yet lots of you out there have taken that step without thinking twice.
much
And
like we did.
here's just a shout out to all of you guys
Yeah,
with
anyone who
caregiver and patient relationships.
finds themselves in the same position or a similar position as us. Hold on. And, speaking of that, those of you who have found yourselves in same position or a similar position, we're hoping that, this video is kind of for you guys because it tackles kind of the pros and cons in a sense of what it means to be in a caregiver and patient relationship while also having an emotional tie to the person you're in that relationship with. For Lauren and I, it's husband and wife. It started boyfriend and girlfriend. For some people, it might be, child and parent or siblings, or even just, having that deep emotional bond with the person you are caring for or who is caring for you. And we decided to make a video kind of, showing the issues we face in that manner, that relationship.
We hope that us sharing how we navigate the combination of professionalism and emotions will be recognizable to many of you in the same situation, and that hearing our stories will in some way be a helpful tool to address similar issues in your relationships.
And yeah, so as always, we love and appreciate you guys. I don't think we'll be doing a scripted intro again anytime soon, but we hope you got the gist of it. And let's get to the video. It is kind of a longer one, but hey, anniversary things, So, yeah.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your family and friends. Thank you guys. We love you so much.
Thank
Hope you
you.
enjoy the video. Bye. Hi, my name is Lauren Showers from Sabia and Loren. Thank you guys for tuning in. I am a hemicorporectomy and going to be answering some questions. Well, initially, we started out in the Talos apartments, and we were also broke, and to have that sort of income for Sabia to just basically be around me 24/7 seemed like an ideal choice, rather than paying somebody else to come into our home and take care of me for whatever amount of period of time and whatnot. Because at that point we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment that didn't have much space at all. Not that space matters, but we just felt like not inviting someone that we didn't know into our home. And so that was our initial reasoning, which then led into that we needed the income to pay our bills, and it helped with savings and whatnot. And then once we moved into the 2-bedroom Talos apartment, we still stuck with Sabia as the 24-hour caregiver, and then at that point we then hired a part-time caregiver to start coming in through part-times of the week, because at that point me and Sabia had started to realize that it's unhealthy in a relationship to be around one another 24/7. What it entails to be my caregiver is more than just changing my colostomy bag or emptying my pee bag or getting me food and water. Also have to make sure that my supplies and my medications and my other devices and everything else are working, charged, and there to be used, or to, just in storage for future use in case. Basically making sure to prepare for every situation and have a backup for every situation, kinda, is what caregiving of me intends of, or takes, because everything with my colostomy bag, my urostomy bag, are constant blowouts, which then cause changes, wafer changes that need to happen, which then sometimes need to strip the bed sheets or completely wash my bucket or whatever the situation happens, and then that's a whole mess that needs to be cleaned up in a proper medical fashion with alcohol and whatnot, so it's properly cleaned up. Because I have C. diff, it's a very, very transferable infection. Apparently just by touching it you can get it, supposedly. And so any time that my fecal matter is outside of my colostomy bag, it is a big like quarantine infection situation that needs to be taken care of medically, right? So caregiving of me entails a lot, and it takes a lot for Sabia to do everything that she does, and she's amazing for everything that she does, really. She's got everything streamlined and set in a fashion to where we always have backups for every situation, it seems. Yeah, no, and the situations that occur don't happen on the 9 to 5 business day or the 9 to 9 that we have our part-time caregiver working. It's usually in the middle of the night when I have to wake her up for it to be taken care of, and so it takes a lot out of Sabia because it is quite a bit of caregiving for me. It entails a lot, but because of the boundaries that I personally have with my colostomy and urostomy and stuff like that, it's easier to have Sabia take care of those things when a blowout in bed or something embarrassing happens than having someone that I'm not as comfortable with taking care of that situation. Because no matter what, even if it's my wife, I still feel embarrassed, but at least with my wife, we've already crossed that boundary and experienced it, and it's not a big deal. I know Sabia doesn't trust that everyone will do things right, and that's because we went to Chicago for rehab and they trained her in everything that's necessary. And there's quite a few things that are surprising that you wouldn't really think of that you need to make sure to do when dealing with different systems like a disabled person like me has, a colostomy, a urostomy, neph tubes. There are times where Sabia doesn't live up to the expectations that one would expect of their wife or caregiver, whatever you want to state, but that's because it's a 24/7 load on her back, so there's bound to be some slack or lack here and there. It's not like she's clocking in and clocking out, she's living it 24/7, and therefore I can't really fault her for the times when she just is too tired or too done. If it's something that's not urgent, she will put it off if she can sometimes here and there, and that sucks, But that's life, That's just part of life. Sabia is actually, it's quite hard for her to shut off the caregiving side to her and be my spouse. She's most of the time locked in on caregiver mode instead. I mean, don't get me wrong, we show each other love and affection, hug on each other and kiss each other every day, tell each other we love each other, but we don't go out on dates. We don't go, well, we haven't gone out on a date in a while. We haven't done the usual, like, boyfriend, girlfriend, spousal stuff that they'll do out in public or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And when we do, she's usually locked in on my safety, making sure I'm okay, and too just concerned with all of that to actually enjoy the moment and have a good time. So that sucks, but bless you. Sabi does have a hard time separating the spouse and the caregiver. Like we've talked about trying to separate the two, and we're doing the best that we can.
Okay.
No, she puts up with a lot of shit that a normal caregiver would not put up with. Sabia is quite amazing when you put it in that respect of the professionality aspect of being a caregiver and difference of a spouse and a caregiver and all that. She actually the reason why she is so hardcore of a caregiver is because she cares and loves me so much. She just wants the best for me at all times, wants me to feel the best, be the best that I can possibly be. And I'm sorry, I'm lost. Can she treat me like an impartial caregiver does or should or would? No, she puts up with quite a bit of crap that no caregiver would put up with, because there are moments where I lose my crap and freak out, and because there are moments where we all freak out, but that's not okay to do that on a caregiver no matter what the situation. But luckily, since it's my spouse, it's allowed me to be able to express myself in every way possible without worrying about losing my caregiver. What are my personal feelings about being so dependent on my spouse to be my caregiver in life? It's really, really difficult for me. I mean, it's been 6 years almost this month since the accident, and to this day I still struggle with asking for the most basic things like help brushing my teeth, because it's just that part of independence as a man that I don't know, I just can't get away from. I feel that I'm the one that should be leading and protecting her and doing these things for her, and instead she's having to do the protecting, the leading, and everything for me. And to me, that is not how I grew up. In my mindset, that is not what the dynamic is supposed to be in a relationship or a marriage. And so that has been difficult to adjust to since the accident. I mean, I have adjusted well, I like to think, but I still do struggle with some of the basic things, asking for help with them, just because it feels like I'm being excessive or too much, too dependent on help and them, and that makes me feel completely useless. I really haven't found my niche yet of what I want to do and what I can do and what my next step in life is going to be. I've honestly been in this stagnant stasis ever since the accident because my plan was to work construction and get a labor job and get some trades under my belt, be a jack of all trades, and work construction my entire life. And so for the past 6 years, I've just dabbled in multiple different ideas: real estate, gaming, the YouTube, uh, even starting to do the book and seminars and TED Talks and stuff like that, maybe. And just really struggling to find my niche. So if you ask, is there anything I can take care of? I don't know. Is there anything I want to take care of? There is. Do I know what I want to take care of? I don't. But I hope I figure it out soon. Yeah, due to the couple medications that I do take and I'm on, I am unable to go out and drink alcohol, and also unable to drive because of my impairment from the meds. Looking from a statistical standpoint, or medical standpoint, I mean. So I don't think me driving on the road while I'm on the medications that I do have will ever become a possibility, just because of the impairment that they do cause, regardless of the person's tolerance or not. Yes, I do feel that that a couple of the medications that I'm on do impair my senses and my reaction time and my responses and my thoughts, and my memory itself has, in the past 6 years, become so short-term and terrible. I don't remember anything in the long term, really, unless I'm reminded about it. Yeah, so so most marriages or most relationships break up around the 7-year mark, and that's where me and Sabia are at. And the reason why most marriages, relationships break up is because it becomes stagnant and there becomes problems and things that they just can't resolve with one another, things like that. Which goes for an interabled couple like me and Sabia. Also, we have our own problems with one another. We have our roadblocks or disagreements or whatever you want to call it. But I feel that since we're around each other 24/7 as we are, that over the years it's helped us build a stronger communication with one another to work through these problems in a healthy fashion. Instead of, I mean, we have our arguments like every relationship, but she's learned to walk away because I literally can't walk away. And we both learned to reconvene later and talk about it in a calm manner. And there are things that, you know, bug me about her, like how she forgets things all the time and misses this or that. But those are little, you know, characteristics of her that she can't help, really. It's just, I mean, she can help somewhat, but there's only so much that she can do. But I feel like since me and Sabia are around each other 24/7, we've built more of a, like, just a stronger bond than any relationship that you'd think of. Yeah, it's not like Sabia can just get up and take off for a day or two and leave me be. she has to be around 24/7. And so when I mean that she walks the other way, she will just go outside and cool off or whatever. She won't leave me behind because that's just not something that she can do as my caregiver. So being my caregiver adds to the dynamic in our relationship of making it as strong as it's become. Like, it almost feels like I'm literally attached to her hip, a part of her body, because most times I am. The hardest part about Sabia going through her caregiver burnout phase was the fact that I was stuck laying around, not being able to get up when I wanted right away and go do what I wanted right away, because it was just too much for her to do at that moment in time. So it really sucked. When she went through her caregiver burnout was during when she was the only caregiver that was taking care of me as. And it was also when I had 2 kidney stones. So it's not like I could even get up if I wanted to, but we weren't getting me in my wagon and going and doing things either. We just sat around the house for a couple months doing nothing. So caregiver burnout sucked in that I didn't get to get up and go out and experience life. My life kind of went stagnant and in stasis along with her hibernation mode. So during Sabia's burnout phase, she did break down to me a couple times and conveyed to me how guilty she felt about not mentally and physically being able to do 100% for me. And one sec. Sorry, where was I at? She did convey to me how guilty she felt about not being able to provide 100% as a caregiver to me, especially being my wife. She wants to be 100% for me all the time. So it really hurt her mentally that she was going through this burnout that she couldn't pull herself out of. And it wasn't her fault. Everyone goes through a burnout phase in life. But she ended up going to her therapist, and her therapist helped her slowly resolve the situation within herself, and she came out of that. Have I suffered a burnout from my situation or from my end of the deal? I've suffered burnouts in waiting for things, on waiting for the prosthetic arm, waiting for lawsuits to come to fruition, waiting for just prosthesis enhancements. But those are the only things that I really get frustrated with. Everything else, everything else is taken care of. And so the 10 months that I had to lay in bed because the 2 kidney stones and the back and forth talking with doctors that would not go in and remove these stones because they were afraid of my body, it's physiology or whatever you call it. I did get to a point at like the 6-month mark or something like that where I got seriously pissed and conveyed to Sabia and even cried a little bit on how I had lost 6 months of my life at this point due to these 2 kidney stones, just laying in bed doing nothing other than watching TV and playing phone games. Sabia helped me work through that mentally and calm down and, work through it all and wait. But it did, at like the halfway through, mess with me mentally that, 10 months of my life was stripped away, and I can't get that time back. But there's no use focusing on what could have been, what could be. There's just what is, and so I learned to soon let it go pretty quickly. In that moment when I was breaking down like I was and whatnot, and I was all pretty much done with just everything, life, everything. Sabia helped me by letting me know that I wasn't as useless and a strain on her and everyone else and the economy and the world as I think I am. Because, I'm just being paid to live in my eyes. And Sabia helped me realize that that's not the case, and that my life, I can do so much more with my life. I just needed to push through this hard moment in my life. Because we all have hard moments in life. It's just if you can get through it or not. And things will get better eventually. And that's basically all I needed to hear to get out of that mindset. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that me and Sabia have this happy, cheery, perfect relationship where everything works out for the better and we're just happy 24/7. That is not the case around here. We have our hard days, we have our tough times, we have our breakdowns like every other couple and relationship. There are things in life that come your way. There are baseballs that come up sideways and hit you upside the head, and you gotta just take it on the chin and keep going. Our latest squabble has been not being a actual couple, being just more a caregiver and a patient relationship. And so to help resolve that, we have started to watch an episode of a TV show with just each other each night before we go to bed. And that way we're bonding over something with just one another, and therefore that's a relationship.
Yeah.
There's no caregiving in that. And that's was our latest squabble, and we're learning to resolve it slowly but surely. What are the chances of us going on an actual date like every once a month? I don't see it being all that high, just because Sabia is a hermit. Really, she doesn't like going out all that much and doing all these things out in public. She'd much rather just stay home and snuggle up on the couch and read a book. Which, that's not how I want to live. So that is our own little squabble. But, I don't see it happening every month, but every once in a while, at the very least, I see it happening. And Sabia has made a conscious effort of lining up some trips or vacations for us to go do outside of the house. For instance, we'll be traveling to Washington here this winter, and then to Seattle too, I think. I think we'll be going to both Spokane and Seattle. And then we'll also be probably, most likely, going with my sister to Nebraska to visit my grandfather and help him line up his things and move him up to Montana. But also say goodbye to my friends down there one last time and show Sabia where I grew up, running around in the summers down there, and just kind of go down memory lane. That'll be a nice trip.
I'm Sabia and I'm Lauren Showers' caregiver and wife. So what do I do as Lauren's caregiver and what does that look like? A lot of it is very simple things, essentially. Colostomy care. He has a colostomy and a urostomy, so those are daily things pretty much. Changing colostomy bags, changing wafers. His urostomy is also hooked up to a large Foley bag, and so pretty much every morning as soon as I wake up, the first thing I do is empty his Foley bag. I change his colostomy bag if needed, and every couple of days we change the actual wafers. That's like the main day-to-day for his care in terms of his body. It also extends to getting him food, getting him drinks, getting him up in his body prosthetic on the days he's able to, as well as scheduling appointments, things like that. Although he has, in the last 2 years or so, he's taken a lot of initiative, wanting to be more independent. So actually things like scheduling appointments and calling people for information, he has taken a lot on himself with that, because he wants to feel like he's been doing more. So that bit is a little bit lesser. When he's up in his body prosthetic, he's mostly as independent as he can get. He's able to get his own food and his own drinks when he's up in his prosthetic and in his wheelchair. So the times when he's up, it's just more just checking up on him, making sure that his ostomies feel okay, that the air in his bucket is okay. And those are like the day-to-days. It also entails getting him showers when he needs them, taking him to places when he needs to go there. And the things that like are more spaced out, like every month I order his medical supplies. Whenever his wheelchairs need serviced, I take those in and get that taken care of. Doctor's appointments, things like that, whenever he has to go in to the hospital. Because with Lauren, with his kidney infections and C. diff infections, those are the main two things that are affecting to his health. And because of the way his surgery was and the way his amputation is, pretty much when he has swelling inside of him from an infection, it makes his pain worse. So it is quite common for us to go to the ER for a kidney infection or C. diff because it makes his pain unbearable. So that's a big part of being his caregiver as well, is, it could be noon or it could be 3 a.m. If his pain's at a point where it's unbearable for him, I load him up in the truck and we go to the ER. And they're mostly really good to him. Most of the nurses there are familiar with him. So, but that is also something that I do often, which I guess goes hand in hand with just transporting him wherever he might need to go. I think that's pretty much what all it entails. Why am I his primary caregiver? The main reason for us choosing from the beginning for me to be his primary caretaker is that while we were in the hospital and rehab, I was there every day, so I was filled with all of this knowledge of his care just from watching them do it, and they taught me to do it regardless whether we were getting caretaker or not, because even if I wasn't his caretaker, there would be times when I would be the person taking care of him. And by the time we got home, it was a mixture of us still being young and fresh in our relationship, because we had been together about a year, and just wanting to be home together after months in the hospital with other people filtering in and out, and we just didn't want someone else in our space, especially at that time. Our option outside of me for a caretaker would have been through like a company, so it would have essentially been a stranger coming into our home to take care of Lauren. And since we were still so fresh to his condition and learning the ropes of our lives now, we thought it made more sense for me to just be his caretaker to make that transition easier for us than having to also welcome a stranger into our home and into our lives to do something that I can do. And also, you know, it made sense like financially and all of that because I also get paid as his caretaker. So, you know, if I'm going to be spending most of my time with Lauren anyway, you know, it doesn't make sense to bring some stranger in that we might not be comfortable in, and when I can just do it and that can be my job. And that, you know, and that made it a lot easier for us to transition into this new life. And then after, I want to say like 4 years, the 24-hour constant caregiving definitely took a toll on both of us. That being together all the time and being like Lauren being solely reliant on me, I hit a burnout period with it. And, you know, with that, Lauren and I were having some problems with it. And so that's when we introduced a second caregiver. And by that point, we had plenty of people in our lives that we trusted that we could just invite in as his second caregiver. So we didn't have to go through an agency or have a stranger come in. We had friends and family who had the time and the availability to fill in those gaps. And so that's when we started 4 days a week, 12 hours a day. We had someone else taking care of Lauren, and I was able to just be his wife on those days. And that made a big difference for us after the first couple of years reaching that burnout point for me. So how is it having someone else step into that caregiver role outside of me when I know what I'm doing, and this is a new person that not only do I have to teach them how to do it, but I have to trust them to do it correctly. In the beginning, it was definitely a challenge for me because I was aware that I was burnt out and that I needed to take a little bit of a break for myself, at least a couple of days a week. But I also have some pretty severe control issues when it comes to Lauren's care because I know his body so intensely, and I know exactly how to do things right for his body specifically. And so it was definitely challenging for me at first to know that like I'm having a hard time doing these things, but I have to give the control over to someone else and trust them to do it correctly. We've been doing the second caregiver for about 2 years now, and it's now a lot easier to hand the reins over whenever we get a new caregiver, because I think we filtered through about 3 since we started this. By our second caregiver, the one we have now, I had made that transition a couple of times and it was a lot easier to hand over the reins, but in the beginning there was definitely a lot of hovering from me, and so like that second caregiver was still like on shift and doing all the things, but I was right there, so I still wasn't really letting myself relax. And that still hits me a lot of times, in terms of like Lauren getting up in his prosthetic and transferring him, even though our other caregiver has the ability to do it, I still find myself just, when it's time to do it, I find myself just being the one to do it because my brain goes, only I can do this right. And you know, it has been a side issue because of that, our other caregiver hasn't actually gotten any chance to practice getting Lauren up. And for some reason with his prosthetic, that's the biggest thing I have an issue with transferring to someone else, because it's so, with his, how do I explain that? With his prosthetic, it's got air pockets in it, right? And Lauren and I know when the air pockets are correct, just because I know his body so well, I know his tells so well. And there's a few times with Lauren's prosthetic where he goes, okay, I think that's good. And then I feel around and I go, no, it's not good, because I know exactly how it should be. And that's a hard thing for someone else to do when it's not like ingrained in them like it is for me. So the prosthetic is definitely a thing that, like, even on my days off, I find myself jumping in to be the one to do that. But outside of, like, handing over that control, because for most everything else I was able to, I have, like, having those times and those days to myself has helped me a lot in terms of the overall burnout I was experiencing. Do I think I'm doing the best job I can with Lauren? I want to say yes, but the answer is no. A lot of times with light things such as, you know, getting him a new Gatorade or this or that, I'll find myself like being like, okay, just a moment, like, you know, let me finish this chapter in my book, or let me do this thing that I'm doing, and then I'll do that thing and I'll have forgotten that he's asked me for something. And so then time will pass and he'll be like, hey, are you gonna get me that Gatorade? And then I'll be, you know, in the middle of something else. And I've been trying to do better at, like, holding myself accountable. Because, like, for big things, like, you know, if his colostomy needs changed, or, like, anything physical with his body that needs to be taken care of, I will say that I think I do amazing and the best ability to that. If he needs a colostomy change, if his Foley bag needs to be emptied, if his wafers need to be changed, you know, things that physically affect him like that, I am good at jumping up right away and doing that. It's the other things where it's like, you know, it's not the end of the world if I don't get him a Gatorade right now, so I'm going to finish what I'm doing. And that's where I'm trying to find the balance, is like still being able to finish my thing but not prolong his. And so that definitely has been a struggle and something I've been working on. And the other thing that I definitely don't do to my best ability at all, that I'm aware of, that has been a big point of issue between us, is in fact getting him up in his prosthetic and getting him out of the house, because I am a big homebody. I have really bad social anxiety, and the thought of going out and doing stuff sounds, I'd rather slide down a stairwell with tacks poking upwards, you know? And so finding that balance of like, okay, I really don't want to do this, but Lauren needs to get out of the house, you know, like he needs to be able to do stuff. That's been a really big issue for me, is pushing myself to, when he says, hey, can I get up? Can we go to the jewelry store? Can we go downtown and look at stores? That's been a hard bit for me. And I don't know if that comes along with the burnout or not, because at the beginning I was really easy with that. He'd be like, hey, I want to get up and go out. You know, we'd be up and out. And now he's like, hey, I want to go up and get out. And I go, oh my gosh, like, can we try tomorrow? Or like, you know, and then tomorrow comes and I go, I don't know, I really don't want to. And with that comes in a lot of the guilt, obviously, because finding that balance between what I can mentally handle and what Lauren deserves, you know, it's really hard for me to figure out, and it's, you know, it's something I've been working on, and I want to say the last like month or so, I have been doing a lot better. Not necessarily with the getting him out of the house bit, but if he asks me to get him up in his prosthetic, most of the times lately I'm up and getting him up. So I have been better about that. But yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing where I'm lacking in his care, is just pushing myself to give him the freedom that he needs. Does me being his wife and his partner influence the time frames it takes me to get him things he asks for? I would say yes, and I'd say it's a two-way street with that as well, because with me being his wife and his partner, I get a lot more leeway from him as his caregiver. like for him and me, if he asks me for, we'll keep using the Gatorade as an example. If he asks me for a Gatorade and I say, okay, 1 second, let me finish this, and it ends up taking me 2 hours bringing the Gatorade, he gives me leeway with that because, I'm his wife, and like he wants me to still be my own person separate of his care and stuff like that. Whereas someone else that we bring in that is solely here to be his caregiver, they wouldn't get that leeway, because they are solely here to take care of him. I'm here to take care of him and as his wife. So it definitely does influence and affect certain things that may take me longer, to follow through with, that we expect caregivers we bring in and pay to do right away. And also with that, and that's where it turns onto my side where, on my days where the burnout is just heavy and I'm like, oh my gosh, the thought of getting up right now and making him a cup of noodles, just like, that just sounds like so much work. I am aware of the fact that I get leeway with it, and so like there will be days where I test the boundaries of that and I push it and I go, okay, I know that he'll be a little bit upset, but like it's not going to be the end of the world if I just like give myself some time to do this and kind of push it off a little bit. Whereas if I wasn't his partner or his wife and I was just his caregiver, I wouldn't do that. So that definitely affects it. And obviously a lot of times affects it in a negative manner. Because there are certain things, like his prosthetic and, things like that where he'll ask for something at the beginning of the day, like a shower, for example, and 3 a.m. rolls around and I finally give him his shower before I go to sleep. So yeah, it's definitely the biggest problem we've had is me trying to find the balance between being just Sabia, being Loren's wife, and being Loren's caregiver. And I don't always balance it well or, in a way that's beneficial. And sometimes the way it's unbalanced is, has a negative impact on Loren. And that's been a big struggle to navigate and try to find. And, everything's trial and error, and yeah, it's how it is. And with that being said, that's not to say that there aren't times where the request is, unreasonable or Loren is in a mood himself. We all have our bad moments, and, with mine being the care, his, can oftentimes be, if he's not feeling well or if his pain is bad, his expectations are a little extreme, and that plays into it as well, taps into the guilt, I guess, where we'll keep using Gatorade as an example, like, he'll ask for a Gatorade and, I'll be like, yeah, let me just finish this chapter of my book, which on one day he'll be fine with, and then another day if he's not feeling well or if his pain's bad, me asking to finish a chapter of my book or finish what I'm doing before doing this task for him will lead to, him being a little ridiculous about it and kind of berating me, which I guess some people will understand my reaction to that and some won't, but if I'm already struggling and feeling guilty kind of about how I'm being or, how I'm doing with his care, and I get berated by him for it, especially if it's something light like that, like obviously if he's like, oh my gosh, I have a blowout, there's urine all over the bed, and I go, oh my gosh, 1 sec, let me finish this. yeah, that's an issue. But if you know, I'm like, I have 10 minutes left in this book. After I do this, I'll get your Gatorade, and I get hit with, you know, like, oh, you know, what taps into the guilt, you know, some not very nice statements about my care towards him. It just makes it so much worse for me, and my brain just completely shuts down, and I go, wow, you know, like, it's that self-pity party you get when you're held accountable for your actions, but for actions that are not the action you're doing at the moment, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain in words. Are we comfortable with talking to each other and expressing when we have issues with each other, or, you know, another, calling each other out for things, or, you know, do we hold on to it because we don't want to hurt the other person's feelings? In that aspect, I really think that it is dependent on our moods. At the end of the day, I will say, no matter what, we are comfortable enough to express our grievances. We're comfortable enough when we have a problem, the times that we do, because we do both. We will hold on to it and then have a blow up, or it's really dependent on the mood, you know, or we'll express it right away. And sometimes it still turns into a blow up, but we are comfortable at the end of the day with expressing those grievances to each other. Do I tolerate things as his wife and caregiver, as his wife, that is his caregiver, that a normal, like, hired on caregiver that has no emotional or personal connection to him probably wouldn't? Yes, and it goes both ways, back with in reference to him giving me leeway with things and tolerating things that a normal caregiver, we would be like, hey, you can't prolong this, that he lets me prolong. It does go the other way as well, you know. Also referring back to if he's in a bad mood or if he's in pain, he's shorter on the trigger and quicker to kind of just being a dick, you know, and we've actually discussed that before, you know, and when it happens, I do call him out for that, you know, if he is absolutely unreasonably upset over something and being kind of mean, you know, and, like, you know, hits me with the, like, you know, like, that I'm terrible at taking care of him, or I don't care about him, or, you know, like, if as for example, like, if I'm on my period, or if I'm having really bad mental health day, and I go, hey, like, I can't take you out today because, like, my cramps are really bad, and the thought of picking you up fucking, it hurts, you know, like, if he's in a rough mood already, I will get hit with, you know, like, where he'll compare my pain to his, or, you know, to try to kind of bring me down for not being able to give him this care, or he'll just be snappy sometimes, you know, if his pain is bad, or he doesn't feel good. And, you know, I'll use last night as an example, actually, because this just happened. Last night, he was sleeping, and he was on his stomach, and his colostomy bag was kind of full of air. It wasn't very full of, like, feces, but it was full of air, and he was laying on his stomach, so it was pretty bubbled out. And I was getting ready to go to sleep, and so I gently woke him up because I needed him to burp it so that I could go to sleep without worrying about a blowout. And his pain had been kind of icky before he fell asleep, and so being woken up from that sleep immediately put him in a bad mood, and he started immediately yelling at me for waking him up, and, like, you know, the mood he was in his brain, he had immediately managed to convince himself that I woke him up solely to wake him up and piss him off. Like, I didn't have a reason for waking him up, I just wanted to ruin his sleep. And I, you know, that's one of those times where I go, hey, like, I was just doing my job. I woke you up because from where I was looking, your colostomy was full of air, and it could cause a blowout if we didn't take care of that before I went to sleep, you know? And I was like, you can't just immediately yell at me and berate me when I'm just doing my job. And so, like, that's an example. Like, you know, if he's if he takes things too far where they don't need to go, we are comfortable with each other enough, just like he's comfortable enough to be like, like, you said you'd give me a shower yesterday and the day before and you kept putting it off. I really want a shower. Like, this is making me feel like shit. Can you please give me a shower? You've made me wait 2 days. In the same sense that I am comfortable with telling him, like, hey, you can't talk to me like that and you can't treat me that way. And if I was not your wife and I was a paid professional coming in to take care of you and you talk to me that way, I would quit. So the leeway goes both ways, and the tolerance goes both ways of things that we tolerate and deal with each other that we wouldn't deal with in a non-emotional and professional setting. And with that, like, thankfully, I'm grateful that we are able to address each other about that stuff and be like, hey, your lack of care is affecting me emotionally, or hey, the way you're talking to me when I'm just trying to do my job is affecting me, and like any couple, sometimes that ends up with us screaming at each other for a little bit, and then we walk away, we chill out, and we reconvene and we calmly talk through it. And other times we're able to just talk through it in the moment. But we are very, the trust is there. I think that's what it all comes down to with being able to voice those things to each other, is we trust the other one, that if I express these grievances or if I call you out for how you're being, I'm not worried about you walking away from me and leaving my life, and that, I think, all comes down to the fact that we trust each other in our relationship to be able to have those tough conversations about how the other is affecting our mental health. What do I think Loren has guilt about the situation we find ourselves in, and the life we live, and yes, I know he has the guilty conscience towards it. A lot of times he feels like, I should leave him and find a real man, and someone who can take care of me and all of this, and that kind of stuff does sit heavily on him, where we see our friends that are our age, and they're having kids, or going on trips, doing things that we would have a way easier time doing if he was still able-bodied, and he does harbor a lot of guilt towards that. On his bad days, he does feel like he ruined my life and all of this, and I guess I'll tell you guys the same thing I tell him, is straightforward. End of the day, if I didn't want to be with him, I wouldn't be with him. I'm not here out of guilt. I'm not here because I, feel like he needs me in his life. I'm here, and I stayed, and I continue to stay because I love Loren. Loren is still the Loren that I fell in love with. He's grown, he's grown emotionally and he's matured a lot, but at the end of the day, the change in his body didn't affect how I see him or how I love him. And if I wanted an able-bodied man who could do this or that or whatever, I would leave Loren and I would go find that man. I stay with him because I love Loren, because the thought of living my life without Loren by my side, but knowing he's still somewhere, does not sit well with me. It doesn't hold any appeal to me. And what I tell him is, like, if this was a deal breaker for me, I would be gone. I wouldn't stay. If I didn't want to be with you, if I didn't love you, if I didn't still see a future with you, I wouldn't be here, And some days he believes me, and some days he's so deep in his own guilt that he, thinks I'm just saying that to placate him. But it's the reality of it, I'm not. I've had my share of staying in relationships where I wasn't happy, and I stayed because I felt like they needed me, or I felt like if I severed that connection, that the bad things that happened to them afterwards would have been my fault. And I've lived that before, and I've grown from that, and because of what I've experienced in those past relationships, I know myself well enough now to know that if I was not happy with Lauren, if I was not satisfied in the life we have together, that I would leave. I would put myself, at the end of the day, you have to be a little bit selfish. You have to put yourself first in certain aspects, and staying with Lauren is putting myself first, because I love him unconditionally and I don't see a future without him. And his condition does not affect that in any way for me. And obviously it's hard some days, and we fight, and we cry, and sometimes we both really just wish it was different. But who I'm spending the life with in my brain never changes. Do I wish that this never happened and Lauren still had legs and we were living a normal life together? Absolutely. But I still have Lauren. And I don't know how to put it in words really to explain what is in my brain, but able-bodied or non-able-bodied doesn't matter to me. It's the person I'm with. And that person that I've chose is Lauren. The person I love is Lauren. The person I want a future with is Lauren. He does everything for me that I need from a romantic partner. He's there for me emotionally. He tolerates my mental health, and he calls me out on shit when it needs to be called out. And he loves me unconditionally, and why would I give that up just to go be with someone who can walk? It doesn't make sense to me. And so I guess, I understand his guilt towards the life we live, but at the end of the day, I chose him, I chose to stay, and I continue to choose to stay every day. And if I ever chose to leave, that too would be my decision. So I understand his guilt, but I don't think it's necessary, because I am making the choices for my... And so yeah, his guilt is unnecessary, because his condition, his injury, his situation, his way of life is not something he chose. It's something that happened to him that was out of his control. Whereas me staying with him, that is me choosing that. So he shouldn't harbor any guilt over my choices. He didn't choose to become to get fucked, but I chose to stay with him. I know it's a crude way of saying it, but yeah, so that was a lot of words, but I hope they made sense. So the 7-year mark in relationships apparently is a big trial area for a lot of couples, and statistically, I guess it shows that about 50% of relationships do end at the 7-year mark. I've actually seen memes about it, but do I think that Lauren and I having to spend all of our time together and so much time together and being so codependent on each other and all of that, and if we have an issue, with me also being his caregiver, I can't just up and go stay on a friend's couch for a couple of days or stuff like that. So we always have to face our issues head on. Obviously if we have a blow up, we'll take the space, I'll go to another room, we'll chill out, but we always have to face the arguments and the problems we have with each other pretty much that day, because we have to, And do I think that kind of gives us a leg up and is beneficial to us, making it through the 7-year curse, and just really anything that might pull the relationship apart? I feel like yes, because here's the thing, most couples do not spend 24/7 together. And granted, Lauren and I get our time apart, and like if we have another caregiver on shift, there are times where I go out with friends, but for the most part, we do spend almost every day together, most of the day. And I do think for us that it is beneficial in terms of things that might normally break a relationship, because Lauren and I know each other's minds inside and out, because not only do we spend all this time together, but at the end of the day, Lauren and I are trauma bonded. We love each other and we're in a relationship, but we also have this deep connection because we went through this terrible thing together, and we came out on the other side. And with that, anyone who's been through something like that understands what I'm talking about, but you just understand each other at a fundamentally different level. And because of that, I think that is why we are able to address things head on and to take that moment apart and then come back through and talk through it and work through it without needing to just disappear for a couple of days and stuff like that. And also with that understanding we have with each other, that also has grown through our grievances with each other, because every argument you have with someone, you learn more about who they are and how they react to things and how they see things, and so throughout the years, I know when Lauren is reacting because he feels like he's being attacked, and I know when Lauren is reacting because he feels guilty, and I know when Lauren is reacting because he's scared. And having that knowledge and that understanding of each other's body language and the way we come back at each other, and like for example, if Lauren says something really shitty and then I say something, like what the fuck, and he immediately goes on the defensive and is attacking me even more, I know, because I know Lauren and I know his reactions, I know that he feels guilty for the original comment and he doesn't know how to direct that guilt, and so it turns into a further attack. As an example, like I can read those responses on him and vice versa. He knows when I'm screaming and freaking out because I'm overwhelmed or because I'm scared or because I'm guilty. Like we can read that on each other, and because of that, it helps us know how to respond to that reaction. And I think that's our biggest benefit, I guess, in terms of that is how well we can read each other's reactions and knowing how to respond to that, to either de-escalate a situation or be like, hey, I know you're being like this because you're hurting or because you're scared or guilty or blah, blah, blah. And and then we move on. We move forward from that because we've addressed why things escalated. They didn't escalate because the fight needed to escalate. They escalated because of an inner reaction that we're able to read on each other. And because of that, like, we're able to move past some things and forgive each other for certain words said or things done that in another relationship, if that understanding of each other didn't exist, would crash and burn a relationship, and we have that deep understanding of each other because we've had to spend so much time together, and with spending so much time together comes arguments and comes deep, long conversations, and just when you spend so much time with someone, you pick up all their tiny little cues, like you just do. And so I think that is why, I have confidence in our relationship is is because we've had the ability to learn each other so well. You know, it'll take something really drastic and terrible to break us. The advice I have for caretakers based off of my own experience is Lauren and I see each other as equals, and you know, we are equals, so we're able to address grievances and call each other out for things that if we didn't would grow and build and, you know, become this big bottle of resentment that would explode and create a toxic environment. And so my biggest thing is the way I see it with a caretaker and a patient relationship is you have to be able to view yourselves as equals, and whether, you know, you're taking care of someone who used to have some type of authority over you or whatever, you know, you have to be able to say, hey, the way you're treating me, you know, the way you make me feel when you go about it this way, it doesn't work for me. Like, I can't, you know, and same with the patient. They have to see their caretaker as an equal and say, hey, the way you do my care this way is affecting me. And the biggest thing really is to push yourself to be open and honest and communicate, because that's the biggest thing, is you just have to communicate. You have to be able to express your grievances to avoid a toxic environment. It might feel uncomfortable in the moment to be like, hey, you know, you yelled at me when I did this thing and that kind of made me feel really shitty and made me uncomfortable. You have to be able to express that, otherwise it builds and builds and turns into a really toxic environment, which is not beneficial to either caregiver or patient. And that's, you know, with Lauren and I already being equals and seeing each other as equals, we were able to immediately be able to have that dynamic and say, hey, dude, don't talk to me like that. Or, you know, like, hey, don't ignore my care for something that's not as important. So you have to be open and honest and communicate, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel, because it blowing up and turning into a toxic environment will make you way more uncomfortable than a little bit of confrontation.